We will have multiple platforms so parents can choose what fits their child best. So, but determining what those are will be guided by KSDE, the health department, and then what parents and staff that they would like to see. So just know there will be a hybrid, there will be a virtual, there will be, we don't know if they'll be in school because we don't know if that's even allowable. So we're really waiting to Friday to see that. We're going to move off to the side. I see we have our Randolph team member with her hand up. And then we'll kind of come on back to other individuals. Ms. Meese, can you go ahead and right now, she didn't have her name on there, but it says IPAC on it. Okay, thank you.
Right. I'm Julie Friedstrom, and I'm a paraeducator at Randolph. And I guess some of my questions are, we're going to continue, if we do the virtual learning, will it be the same as what we did from March on? I guess my concerns are, I happen to be in a classroom and the teacher would say, how many of you done your work? How many of you gone online and looked at the videos? About 2 kids had. Class of 21, I would say probably 2 weeks before the school year, there are about 6 students left. And I don't know, Dr. Anderson and your team, what you did was phenomenal in a short period of time. And I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. But will the requirements, if we go to virtual learning, will the requirements or expectations be a little different? Will the students be getting grades? And how is that going to look so that everyone, they need to be accountable for themselves? And how's it going to look with going in to the next grade?
Right, so and every question that's being asked, we're writing those questions down. If you don't hear us give feedback yet, this is to get as many questions, suggestions, ideas. We're jotting those down. We will be posting a frequently asked question and answer document tomorrow. I will tell you that the KSDE department is giving some different guidelines for online learning when that does come out on Friday. I don't know what those are, but we do have staff member in Topeka that's on that KSDE planning team. So while we have some small insight, I can just tell you that that will look different in terms of the amount of time and attendance, and grading will be required, and other things will be required in a more robust way for online people. So know that that will look different. Moving from that, I'm going to turn it over. Mrs. Sharp is now in the room. You all, we're managing 5 or 6 rooms, and you know what? If I just stay in this room, people are going to think I forgot about them in the other rooms. I'm going to give you our next question. Ms. Sharp is our Director of Elementary. She is on and is going to continue this facilitation. I don't see her quite yet, but I do know that she is on the team. Someone is mentioning in the item about some of the items that they like that are being shared. Again, if you put it in the chat, we're going to also add it to the comments. Here's the next question. What would you like to see happen moving forward for this upcoming year if, in fact, we are all back in? All students are allowed to return. All staff are allowed to return, with the exception of those who've chosen to be virtual, which, again, about 600 people have signed up for that. But for those that are choosing to return, what are some considerations you'd like to see in place, whether it's schedule, whether it's PPE equipment? I can tell you the staff is providing the masks for students. But with just that general information, what are some things that you'd like to see or ideas that you'd like to see implemented? I'm going to open this up to the floor. And Ms. Meese, is Ms. Sharp now in the room so that she can continue this process when I do leave?
I do not currently see her in the room. It does not look like she is logged in yet, and I have not seen her come through the waiting room yet either.
Okay, I see she mentioned that she's in, so I'll just make sure she comes to the right room. We'll continue this piece. So based on that, what ideas do you have? Ms. Gorsuch, I'm going to leave it to you to continue to facilitate. There were no Spanish families, I take it, in the Spanish room? Great. Ms. Gorsuch, that's the question on the table. What are the ideas? What do people want to see in place? Should we all return back in August, which is also a strong possibility that we'll be asked to all return? What would you like to see occur? Ms. Meese, please send me to the DCAC room if you can.
So what kind of feedback, what are your suggestions? And the way we'll do this is you can either put your name in the chats indicating that you'd like to say something, or you can raise your hand via Zoom to give a response.
My mom would like to know where's the
I didn't even get a ballot.
the ballot thingy. What is that?
To vote on what you want
To vote.
So before I leave, if you're asking about the survey, we can continue to send back out in the link. I see Dr. Gray is joining, which is great. So we'll make sure that the survey goes in the chat box. It'll also be posted online if you'd like to continue to fill out that survey, giving your opinion. If there are no items about what you'd like to see occur moving forward for next year, we're going to go to our next question from the survey to see your feedback from that. Mrs. Gorsuch, do you have the survey pulled up as well? I see Dr. Gray has entered, so, and Dean also has his hand up. So I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Gorsuch, starting with Dean, and then going on to the next question.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dean.
Hi. So if everyone is back, or even if just some of us are back, some of our kiddos are back, one thing I would really hope to see, and I think a couple others mentioned this in the chat as well, is some pretty strict adherence to grouping, so that both in terms of kiddos as well as staff, so that because at some point there will be an incident where someone will come in that's infected, that will, so that we don't have to shut down an entire school or send everybody home. So that's been very successful in early childhood settings during all of this, and has allowed us to mitigate a lot of issues. So I would just hope some very strict adherence to grouping if when kiddos come back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dean. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else? Okay, so our next question, and I popped out for a second and popped back in, and I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that this is a session to gather feedback, just like Mr. Dean shared. We are not really answering questions because the guidance from the state hasn't come out yet, but if you have questions or concerns, this is a forum to bring them up so that we can make the most or the best informed decision as a district. So if Dr. Anderson has already addressed this question, we'll go to the next one, but our question is this, is that TPS may delay in-person classes for 60 days, and which would be approximately October, and only do remote learning during this time. Exceptions would be made only in extremely challenging family situations. Please share your thoughts. And I'm gonna put this question in the chat as number 1. So if you didn't quite catch everything in the question, you can find it in the chat. It is just being sent right now. So raise your hands again, and we'll limit each person's response to 1 minute, please. Dr. Gray has also put his name in the chat, and I see Miss iPad is raising her hand. So we're gonna go ahead and, let's see, we'll unmute you. Miss Meese, could you help me unmute iPad?
Unmute. Here we go.
All right, there you go.
Yes, I'm Julie Friedstrom, and I'm a paraeducator. One of my biggest concerns are special needs students. I know I have a grandson that's special needs, and he was in 3rd grade going into 4th, and of course what was going on in the virtual learning was way over his head, unfortunately. I mean, he was there every day. And so what are you going to do with our special needs students? Are they going to have groups with their SPED teachers and go back to learning maybe how to read or the math for the 3rd grade? And so those are my concerns, our special needs kiddos.
For special needs kiddos. Okay, thank you so much. So we're still on question number 1. Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? If you want to raise your hand or put your name in the chat, you can also put your responses in the chat. All right, we'll go on to question number 2. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. The second question is that TPS will be providing a mask for all staff and students. Staff and students are required to wear masks during times when appropriate distancing is not possible. How comfortable are you with this expectation for yourself and your child if it were to be implemented this school year? Again, I'm going to put the question in the chat. So you can look at that, respond via the chat, or raise your hand to give your feedback.
Yeah, about the masks. Will they be provided a new mask every day? And if students wear or bring their own masks, how are we going to be assured that they're clean? And then I went back and watched the county commissioners meeting yesterday after it was over. I watched it last night, and in their new recommendations, they're saying that people who are public speaking, which would include teachers, they would not need to wear a mask if they can establish a 10-foot distance if we are back in the classroom. So that would help. That would help to those special ed kids who are hard of hearing. I'm a special ed parent at Chase Middle School, and I have a couple who are hard of hearing that rely on lip reading. So.
All right, so thank you so much, and I'll hand it over to Dr. Gray to continue facilitating.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gorsuch. And I want to go back to Mrs. Conroy quickly. Ms. Conroy, and you referenced where you had gotten that information. Can you please include that in the chat so we can go back and find that information as well?
I'm sorry, can I do what?
Can you share where you found that information so that we can go back? Yes, ma'am.
I went back last night. I went to the Shawnee County Commissioner's website, and I watched their 2-hour meeting that they had yesterday, where they voted. And in there, they went back and amended one of the where they said everyone has to wear a face mask.
Yes, ma'am.
But if you're public speaking and you can keep 10 feet, not 6 feet, but 10 feet, because if you're up at the front of the classroom, you're usually speaking louder. So if we were back in the classroom and teachers were up in the classroom doing their regular lesson, and they could keep 10 feet from, the front row of the students, then they would not need to wear a mask.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that information. Does anyone else have feedback on mask wearing, requiring mask? Yes. You may unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead.
Here's my take on mask wearing and my issue with it. I'm a special education teacher at Topeka High. I'm also a grad student that lives here in Manhattan, so I commute every day. Some of the kids on my caseload, they have grandparents that live with them. And the issue with that is those grandparents that live with them, they are very sick. And if we go back to 100% kids being in the schools, those students are likely not to return, because if those students return to the school and they pick up, God forbid, COVID-19 or the flu or anything else, and they bring it home to that grandparent who's already very sick and immunocompromised could catch that and get even worse. Now, I've already responded to the survey. I've given my input. I've ordered an N95 mask. I'm against opening the school, but as a teacher, if you open the school and you have 100% kids there, I don't know how you're going to put 32 kids in a classroom with 10 feet apart in certain classrooms at Topeka High and manage that. But if you open the school in August, mid-August, I'm going to be there. That's my job. I will figure it out somehow.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm co-teaching English this year, and my co-teacher has some regular English 9 classes where she has 32 kids in that class, and I don't know how she's going to social distance 10 feet apart 32 kids in her class.
Again, thank you so much for your feedback. And again, as we plan, we will be taking this feedback into consideration. As we move on to question number 3, if no one else wants to, go ahead, see some hands there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment. My name is Tanae Stewart. I have 2 kids that go to Chase Middle School, and then also an elementary kid school that goes to State Street. I was like, my youngest one, I'm not saying open up the school all the way, but I am saying that they do need to be in front of a teacher to get some of that learning. As far as in if it could be like broken up to where like only certain days, like the kindergartners or certain days for they can, you know, make sure that they get tested as far as in their temperature wise and all that kind of stuff, to where they're able to get into the classroom and get that one-on-one attention. Because some things, yes, we do know, but then some things we don't know that we need extra help on, or at least have it to where the parents that are teaching, the parents that are staying home to teach their kids some of this stuff, if we could have like seminars with them to get them well to where they're able to do it, or something like that, to where we're able to teach our kids some of this stuff, because they need that one-on-one attention and they need that support as far as in getting the right education. But I'm not saying like most of the stuff can be on virtual, but sometimes they need to be allowed into that classroom, or the parents or somebody needs to be able to get taught something to where we know the formula of what needs to happen.
Thank you so much for that comment. Yes, Miss Hitch. You could unmute yourself.
I'm sorry.
Hi, guys. I just had a question in reference to the second question with masks. It indicates when social distancing is not doable. What's an example of a situation where, I mean, are you seeing masks in the classroom or just in certain situations in the school? I was just curious, an example of that type of situation.
Again, Ms. Hitch, I mean, that's a great question, but I want to make sure that I remind everyone the purpose of this meeting. It is really to get feedback, to hear what parents and educators feel about the reopening of school. In terms of our reopening plan, that will be shared next week. And so we'll be able to share more details of what that looks like. But really right now, we're trying to make sure that your feedback, your voices are heard and are taken into consideration as we draft the reopening of school plan.
I guess I was just thinking like my feedback would depend on like, you know what I mean? Like if it's all the time, it would be different than if it were in certain situations. I feel like I'm a 5th grade teacher, so I feel like it would be a little bit easier for me to kind of enforce the mask policy, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. I just am concerned about the younger children and trying to keep masks on and clean and, you know, that sort of thing.
And Ms. Hitch, you have a valid concern, so thank you for that. Again, we'll be sharing more details about that as we move into next week. I see that Ken has his hand available. Mr. Ken, you can.
I mean, we don't even. Yes.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. First off, this goes right along with the comment from the gentleman user earlier. I am a grandparent who has custody of a small child. And I can tell you from personal experience, and why this whole thing concerns me is because back pre-COVID, when the kids were actually in school, every week my granddaughter was coming home sick of something. You know, she was acting like she had a flu every single week, and we was having to get it taken care of. I am disabled with multiple health issues, and you know, it affected me just with the colds, you know, because I suffer from stuff like COPD and heart disease and all kinds of stuff. And it really concerns me because it only takes a second for a child to take a mask off and grab something and wipe their face with their hand, and I'm dead, you know, because this stuff comes home. Trust me, it all comes home. And that's what concerns me. And that's why I said earlier that I think we not only should wait this 90 days out, but I think it should be reevaluated at the end of 90 days to see if it needs to wait even further, because this is not going to be over until they can find some sort of a antivirus or antiviral that can actually kill this thing. So I think, you know, for those who don't believe it, the world as we knew it has changed, and it's not going to go back for a long time, and it concerns me. So that's just my feedback on that.
And Mr. Ken, thank you so much for that feedback, and we do understand that. So again, as we are drafting our plan, those items will be considered, and I can say that they have been considered. So thank you for that feedback. I want to move on to question number 3, because I know that our time is rapidly expiring here. Question number 3 deals with temperature checks. It says that TPS may conduct temperature checks or health screenings for students and staff who come on campus per county guidelines. What are your thoughts about that?
And again, Dr. Gray, I put that question in the chat for those who might want to look at it again.
Okay. Anybody want feedback? Yes, Mr. Ken?
Did you say me, sir?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree. I think it ought to be that way. I mean, that just ought to be automatic.
Okay.
Regina McCarthy sent a message in the chat saying she'd like to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
I actually was thinking, yes, I think it would be a great idea to do temp checks. I don't know how accurate it'll be every day. On school, and then come, you know, back into school when we're ready.
Again, Ms. McCartney, one of the things that you will see is that, again, without going or sharing anything about the plan, I believe that you will see several available. So again, great feedback.
But I do think temp checks would be great. I mean,
yes,
that's important.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I see Ms. Friedstrom.
Yes, I am I am for temperature checks at home. I think it said on the survey asking, at school. No, temperature checks at school, not at home. I don't know how reliable at home temperature checks are, and sadly enough, so many people send their kids to school sick. And so I think it's imperative how one goes about doing that. That's wonderful. But I think we need to have temperature checks at school.
And please, if you have not done so, please go log in and take the survey, because we want to make sure that as we are developing the plan, that we take into consideration all of the voices. So please make sure that you take time to fill out the survey. Again, yes, go ahead.
Yes, Miss Tiffany's iPhone had a question that she put in the chat.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just curious about the temperature checks. I assume you're referring to those being done on campus?
That is correct.
Okay, and then what is the protocol for when or if a student has the temperature and we reach out to parents? There were times where parents didn't have a contact phone number or working phone number, or we were unable to reach them. What's the protocol for, I don't know if I should say isolating that student, but what is the protocol for when you have a student in the office or in the school building that has the temperature check that comes back temperature, unacceptable to be at school, and no way to reach out to the parent? That's happened in the past with illnesses or lice or the flu or whatnot.
And again, Ms. Tiffany, you bring up a great point. And as I said at the beginning, really the purpose of this meeting is to hear what concerns you guys have so we can make sure that they are addressed as we develop the reopening plan. In terms of that plan, it cannot be shared because we're waiting on the State Department recommendations, which will happen on Friday, July 10th.
Okay, I apologize. Let me voice my my concern is that we have those in the past, and with COVID, they would just be higher risk.
Yes,
Thank you.
And we will be sharing that plan with parents on next week. So again, you bring up a great point, and I believe it's something that we will take into consideration.
And Dr. Gray, Vandrade had a question, and then Mrs. Conroy, and then user, and then we probably should move on to question 4.
Okay, go ahead.
So Miss Vandrade, or
Yes,
Mr.
my name is Veronica Andrade, and I'm a teacher at Highland Park High School. I have a concern with the temperature check policy for 2 reasons. Number one is many COVID patients do not show or do not have a fever. They can go through the whole process of illness and not ever show a fever. My other concern is I had students in my classroom who were very sick right before spring break, and I would send them to the nurse, and because they didn't have a fever, they were not sent home. So that's a concern that I have. My other concern is I know of many parents, and I'm guilty of it myself, who give the kids Tylenol in the morning so that they can go to school. So I think that reading of temperature thing is just not quite kosher and not a really good example of being able to detect if kids are sick.
Again, thank you so much for that feedback. Okay, was there someone else, Ms. Gorsuch?
Yes, Mrs. Conroy, and then user.
Yeah, last night I was in the meeting for the educators, and just like she was saying, parents will send their kids to school in the mornings sick. Is there a way that we would be able to do temperatures like in the middle of the day, or would teachers be able to have thermometers and you could check temperatures before kids came into your classroom? Because just checking them in the morning is going to kind of circumvent if they've been prepared to not have a fever in the morning.
Thank you for that, Ms. Conroy. And then user.
I want to say I'm a frequent user at Genesis Gym here in Manhattan, and they screen hundreds of people in a day using those electric thermometers, and you can do that fairly painlessly in a matter of seconds, holding it up just to a person's forehead. So imagine if, I don't know how many nurses are at certain schools. So if you have 1 or 2 people that can help, you can make it through a group of kids fairly painlessly, I would imagine. But I mean, as to another question that I just heard, if you have the, I don't know, the administrative assistant or the person that checks kids in when they come in later, I would imagine if you had a thermometer with her when the students come in later in the day, when they check in or out, I would imagine you could check their temperature then. But again, as to what I heard, with not a lot of kids showing fever, people showing fever, I don't know how reliable that is.
But again, you bring up some great points that we will take into consideration. If we could move on to question 4, because we have 2 questions left here. Our plan is to implement various scenarios. I want the team to consider the 4 scenarios. Scenario A would be 100% of students would be on campus with distant learning, with distancing requirements. Scenario B would be 50% of students on campus with distancing and the other 50% of students at home on remote learning. And I think I saw something in the chat relating to that. Scenario C would be students primarily in distant learning with only a small group of students on campus. And then the final scenario would be 100% distant learning, all students off campus. When you hear those various scenarios, is there one that speaks to you?
And again, the question is in the chat with the different scenarios. And Dr. Gray, a couple of people have mentioned that it's hard to hear you. So if you couldn't hear him, you can read the question in the chat as well.
Well, let me speak up. Again, there's 4 scenarios that we're considering here. Again, the first scenario would be 100% of students on campus with distancing requirements. Scenario B would be 50% of students on campus with distancing requirements, and the other students are at home via remote learning. And then we have scenario C, which students primarily, they're going to be involved in distant learning with only a small group on campus. And then the final one would be 100% distant learning. Is there one that speaks to you? I see that Dean has his hand up. Yes, you may go ahead, Dean.
Oh, sorry. I'll be honest, I don't know if any of those actually jump out as good options to me. What the option that I don't see there, and maybe I'm just misreading them, is an option to bring students back, but more on a cyclical basis. So on any given day, we don't have everyone there, so that we're able to maintain better grouping and to have people more spread out, but that we are still having that face-to-face contact with kiddos. I know that for me as a parent, that's something that would be a nice, that with supplemented with virtual learning might be something that we could live with and work with. So just putting out there, but I know it's, logistics are hard, but the everybody back, I struggle to see how that could work, but I'm interested in hearing your all thoughts on how you figured that out.
And just to provide some clarity, because I also saw some questions in the chat, that scenario B would be like a group A and a group B. For instance, like group A might come on Monday, Tuesday, group B come on Wednesday, Thursday. So just to provide some clarity around that.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Anyone else?
Yeah. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. If we could just do like certain like 5th graders or 4th grade or something to where the kids can come in at certain periods of times, just to get just to have that contact with other students, and also to be able to get that that attention with that teacher, because some kids are able to learn virtually and some people need hands-on, to be actually taught. So that's what I would want to see happen, to where, a certain amount of group of kids can come in and do it like day by day or even week by week, or some certain kids come in a day. I would like that better. It's half virtual and half in class, if that's possible.
As we move to our final question, again, we want to thank you guys so much for your feedback. But our final question is, what is your greatest concern about starting school? What is your greatest concern about starting school this year? Again, what is your greatest concern? Yes. Okay, we have a user. Okay.
I think my greatest concern about starting school would be just a lack of overall preparedness.
Okay.
Just kind of, and that is in terms of being prepared for COVID-19 and not being prepared to teach and do my job as well. Because I owe my time to not just my caseload students, but to the 100+ students that I'm going to see in the English classes that I'm going to teach. So that's my greatest concern, is that I'm not going to be adequately prepared for COVID-19 and for my students.
Okay, I hear from educators. What about parents? What are your greatest concerns as we move into this school year? Yes, Ken, I see Ken.
Yeah, same thing I talked about earlier. I don't, you know, as far as I'm concerned, COVID hasn't changed from the moment they stopped making kids go to school. Nothing's changed. So the fear is them bringing something home to me or another family member.
We have 3 other hands raised. Mrs. Conroy.
I have 2 big concerns. The first one is the in class, if we do like 50-50 or, you know, alternate or whatever, or Dr. Anderson was talking about around 600 kids wanting to do complete virtual learning. My concern is the kids, if kids do come back to the classroom, I feel like there's gonna be a big difference in classroom learning versus those who only virtual learn. I just don't think you get enough. I'm afraid the kids that do virtually might fall a little farther behind. And then the other concern is the buses. And I think we only have about 100 buses. And the only reason this is a concern to me is because I have bus duty in the morning. And there are a bunch of kids. I don't know how we would get the kids to school, you know, without causing an issue with, you know, are they going to have masks at home to put on before they get on the bus? You know, there's parents who don't want their kids wearing masks. The buses are very concerning to me.
Then we have Mrs. Taylor with her hand raised. We'll get you at the last. Mrs. Stewart had her hand raised for a while, and then Mrs. McCarthy.
Yes. I was also concerned with that too, as far as in what the gentleman was talking about earlier, as far as in us contacting the virus and everything. That would be my biggest concern. And also, yeah, just not enough preparedness as far as in what kind of roads we're gonna have to deal with ahead, as far as in the kids getting to school and how are they getting to school, and just all the coming in contact with different people too. So that would be my greatest concern, as just not being ready and all the way prepared for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mrs. McCarthy?
Sorry about that. My biggest concern is I have a kindergartner and 2 high schoolers. The 2 high schoolers I'm not too worried about, but the kindergartner, you got to realize little kids are not sanitary by any means. As much as you can tell them to wash their hands, she does wash her hands all the time, but they don't leave their mask alone. You put a mask on them, they're fiddling with it all day. So I'm not seeing how that's going to be productive with them, especially if you have 30 kids in a class, and trying to keep them as far apart as possible, which I think will not work. I feel like they need to be separated more. I don't know how the teacher is going to manage that. That's my biggest worry.
And again, thank you for that concern, Ms. McCartney. And just want to make sure that everyone knows that through these sessions, we are developing a frequently asked question document that we will share with you guys as we move into next week. So we can make sure that some of these concerns that have been brought up are addressed. I believe our last person is Ms. Taylor.
Hi, so I think it's hard to pinpoint like a biggest concern, but mine would be, I think, less that my family will contract it, I think, and more that we, you know, bringing kids back to school together will cause large community outbreak and overwhelm our local healthcare systems here. That, in my opinion, isn't too far off. And secondly, is the social, emotional, and mental health of our, not only the kids, but all of our families, and how we can kind of keep that virus from transmitting, but also really take into account those other things. And of course, the learning as well. I think, unfortunately, all those other things I already mentioned, though, to me are a priority over the learning right now. But I also want to say thank you so much to 501, and I really do have faith that you all are taking all of this into consideration, and I deeply appreciate that. And I know it's not going to be easy, and we might not get it right the first time, but I know you guys are keeping on top of it, and thank you.
Yeah. Again, we want to thank you so much, all of you guys, for your feedback. I want to remind you that tomorrow, just in case you know someone who wants to join us, we're going to have these sessions again for educators as well as parents at 6 p.m. So if you want to join us once more, please do. Or if you have some friends and you would like for them to hear or to share their feedback, please share the links that we've shared with you guys today. Again, thank you so much.
Dr. Gray.
And we will have our plan available for parents on next week. So please be on the lookout for that. And lastly, Ms. Friedstrom. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I want to commend everyone that is on this task force that is working with, whether we're at school or whether we're at home. I'm sure that whoever's on this task force has learned the pros and cons to the virtual learning. And if they do choose whatever route you go, I know that you will educate all of the teachers with their expectations and how we work with our children and students. And I thank you immensely.
Thank you for that comment. Again, thank you guys so much. And you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.